I'm the chair of the Sunday Services Committee here at DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church. I welcome everyone to our service this morning and welcome to visitors. I welcome our visitors to our open and inclusive community. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold that there are many spiritual paths to truth and meaning, and we support one another as we explore these paths. I would like to especially welcome our guests and welcome again those who have visited us before. Visitors, it is the custom of our congregation to invite you to stand and give your name and where you are from, if you feel comfortable doing so. Are there any visitors who would like to introduce themselves this morning? All right, well, we welcome all of our visitors, those who introduce themselves and those who do not, and please join us after the service for coffee hour down in Creeves Hall, just down the stairs. We would love to have a chance to get to know you better. Our Director of Religious Education, Steve Cooper, and our Congregational Life Coordinator, Mary Law, are eager to meet you, as are all of our members. Our service can be heard outside the glass doors at the back of the sanctuary, should anyone feel the need to leave the service for any reason, and there are chairs provided there for your convenience. As we begin our service, please silence all electronic devices, and I also have one committee announcement. Please note that there was an error in the May newsletter, and the May 26th service, that's next week's service, with Reverend Mooney will be a single service at 10:30. The Sunday Services Committee regrets the error, and we look forward to seeing you on May 26th at 10:30.
We light our chalice this morning for a free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
morning. Welcome to our service exploring curiosity and imagination. Thank you for being here today to be curious with us. Thank you also to Mike Winter for planning the service with me. And thank you to Vera Palin, who has stepped in today because our music director, Bonnie Brewster, was unavoidably delayed on her return in time for our service. And so, unfortunately, the music in your order of service does not match what Vera is playing. If you are curious what she is playing, please ask her after the service. I'm sure she will be happy to tell you. The hymns will be the same. So thank you, Vera. We really appreciate it. Today, we celebrate and nurture the insatiable curiosity of the human brain and the powerful imagination that drives it. We all know that curiosity can be fun, but did you also know that curiosity can be healthy? Being curious can make us happier and healthier, and being curious in a way that helps us to improve the world can make the world a better place for ourselves and for others. And so in that spirit, this morning I invite you to wonder. Let's start with a question that you already have. Pause for a second and consider a question that inspires your curiosity. It may have an answer, or it may not. It may be serious or silly. It may be general or specific. It might be a question that you've had for a long time, or it might be one that just occurred to you this morning over breakfast. But hold that question in your mind this morning as we explore the ways that curiosity improves our lives.
It is now time to gather. And I would like to invite the young at heart, to come on forward and join me as we get curious together. So our theme this month has been what? Curiosity. Yes, Sasha. Absolutely. So today we're talking about curiosity and imagination and what it means to be a people of curiosity. What does that mean? So in practice, it would be like trying to imagine what could be. So we use our curiosity to imagine what a different world might look like. So in fact, our fourth UU principle is about curiosity. It's a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And one of our sources, remember me talking about sources a couple months ago during a service? One of the sources is the guidance of reason and the results of science. So Unitarian Universalists are curious. We love to ask questions. Have any of you, while at home, was curious about how something works? Ellie? You're wondering how a clock worked. Did you take the clock down off the wall and take it apart to see how it works? No? Yeah, Trey.
I've always been curious about locks.
About how locks work? Those are a little bit harder to take apart, but you can. You've done it? Okay. You've taken apart a door lock?
I haven't taken it apart myself, but I did look up how they do
You looked up how to do it. That's the nice thing about the internet, is that you can actually see how things work without actually taking them apart. But taking it apart is the fun part, because then you get to figure out how to put it back together without your parents finding out. So today we have a story about a young man from Africa that was very curious about how things work, but he gave himself a challenge of figuring out how to solve a problem. So he used that curiosity to invent something. So we're going to watch the video about what this young man, Richard, did.
This is where I live. I live in Kenya, at the south parts of the Nairobi National Park. Those are my dad's cows at the back, and behind the cows, that's the Nairobi National Park. Nairobi National Park is not fenced in the south where I live, which means wild animals like zebras migrate out of the park freely. So predators like lions follow them, and this is what they do. They kill our livestock. This is one of the cows which was killed at night, and I just woke up in the morning and I found it dead. And I felt so bad because it was the only bull we had. My community, the Maasai, we believe that we came from heaven with all our animals and all the land for herding them, and that's why we value them so much. So I grew up hating lions so much. The Morans are the warriors who protect our community and the livestock, and they were so upset about this problem. So they killed the lions. It's one of the 6 lions which were killed in Nairobi. And I think this is why the Nairobi National Park lions are few. So a boy from 6 to 9 years old in my community is responsible for his dad's cows. And that's the same thing which happened to me. So I had to find a way of solving this problem. And the first idea I got was to use fire, because I thought lions were scared of fire. But I came to realize that that didn't really help, because it was even helping the lions to see through the caution. So I didn't give up. I continued. And the second idea I got was to use a scarecrow. I was trying to trick the lions that I was standing near the caution. But lions are very clever. They will come the first day and they see the scarecrow and they go back. But the second day, they'll come and they say, "This thing is not moving here, it's always here." So it jumps in and kills the animals. So one night, I was walking around the cowshed with a torch. And that day, the lions didn't come. And I discovered that lions were afraid of a moving light. So I had an idea. Since I was a small boy, I used to work in my room for the whole day. And I even took apart my mom's new radio. And that day, she almost killed me, but I learned a lot about electronics. So I got an old car battery, an indicator box. It's a small device found in the motorcycle, and it helps motorists when they want to turn right or left. It blinks. And I got a switch where I can switch on the lights on and off. And that's a small torch from a broken flashlight. So I set up everything. As you can see, the solar panel charges the battery, and the battery supplies the power to the small indicator box. I call it a transformer. And the indicator box makes the lights to flash. And as you can see, the bulbs face outside, because that's where the lions come from. And that's how it looks to lions when they come at night. The lights flash and trick lions that I was walking around the cowshed, but I was sleeping in my bed. Thanks. So I set it up in my home 2 years ago, and since then, we have never experienced any problem with the lions. I used to hate lions, but now because my invention is saving my father's cows and the lions, we're able to stay with the lions without any conflict. Ashole, it means in my language. Thank you very much.
Flicker on and off in different places to trick the lions that he was actually moving, but he wasn't.
Right, so he made it created an invention that allowed lights to flicker on and off so it looked like he was there. Yes, Trey.
He took solar power. I'll just kind of go into it a bit more. He had solar panels on top of his house as such that we have on the roof here. And then he used a sort of transmitter, I guess, to take that energy and then put it into the old light. And then he had a signal. He
So
had some
like
sort
the
of signal
blinker
that
on your
was-
car.
Yeah, he had some sort of signal that would make it go on and off. Definitely wasn't code, I know that, because there's,
Right, it was straight analog. There's no digital in there. So it took the light energy from the solar panel, took that energy down to power the battery. So it charged the battery during the day. So at night, the battery would have power all night to flash. And it was the blinkers on a motorcycle. So it would blink over here and blink over there. So, Lulu, how old are you?
11.
You're 11. So Richard was 9 when he invented that. It was 10 when he did that. Have you created anything that changed our community? Do you think it's possible that in the next few years you might discover something, or you get curious about something and create something new? It's always possible. Yes. So that's what it's about, being curious. You're curious. You wonder how things work. And then you allow your imagination to take that curiosity and to put it into something new, to make something new. And it might be something to just make it easier to make toast in the morning, or it might be something that saves energy or eliminates pollution. Anything's possible when you're curious. Let's stand in body or spirit. We're going to sing hymn number 338, I Seek the Spirit of a Child. And we're going to sing verses 2 and 3. And after the first verse that we sing, the kids and I are going to go to class.
Good. What a great topic. Creativity and imagination. When Kat asked if I would work jointly with her on this topic, I thought, sure. Science lover, curiosity fosters inquiry, inquiry leads to scientific discovery, no brainer. Then, as I began to sketch out the foundations of the topic, for a while this topic seemed to close in on me a bit. Everyone here is in favor of curiosity, right? How do you get to a deeper analysis of curiosity? It seems so mundane to repeat how important and meaningful curiosity is. What will people hearing our talk walk out of here with? How can we challenge you to look at curiosity in a new, deeper, more meaningful way? That's what I think all of these Sunday talks should do, as many weeks as possible. Engage us and encourage us to look differently at the world, to pass by the rote, media-presented images and thoughts, to broaden us and deepen us. This will make us a community that thrives, that fosters growth in each other, to make it darn near impossible for us to not show up here each week, sharing and enriching each other with innovative ways to address our challenging world. What I'm saying is that there's a lot to be curious about. I'm in favor of curiosity there. I stand forthright and say, I support curiosity. Let us bring curiosity into as much of our life as possible. Pretty earth-shattering declarations there, right? But how do we do that here at DUUC? How do we make that happen? I think that's a goal that we need to aim for. Well, our Science Sunday forums meet twice a month to discuss popular topics and things that pique our curiosity. They seem well received. After all, 40 to sometimes over 100 people at times seem willing to wake up and get here fairly early on a Sunday morning to have their curiosity sated or piqued. If you haven't been to Science Sunday yet, I actually think that right now you are. This is the third Sunday of the month, and we're meeting right here, right now, in a joint gathering of Science Sunday and DUUC's Sunday service. That's pretty important to me, and I think it's been important to people that have been engaged with me in Science Sunday, too. But don't worry, we'll show you all the secret handshake a little later.
So what in the world does science tell us about curiosity? Well, first, it has been demonstrated to be a powerful tool in learning. Many studies have investigated the value of curiosity in learning and in changing patterns of behavior. In one, a number of methods were developed to encourage college students to utilize the stairs rather than the elevators in an attempt to promote exercise and its many benefits. Explanations were tried, rewards were tried, punishments were tried, but all had limited or no success. But then the researchers posted a daily trivia question in the elevator lobby, and the answer was in the stairwell, several flights up. There was an immediate, significant, and sustained increase in stairway traffic as a result of this experiment.
In another study, students were told how valuable watching a series of instructional videos would be. You know, those instructional videos you all enjoy watching all the time. There was, you might guess, no measurable increase in viewing patterns. Gesundheit. However, when students were told that when they got to the end of each video, they would be treated to the secret behind a magic trick, viewing surged. Maybe you don't know that I'm a bit of a magician. You laugh? If you didn't know that, it's because I really am not. An amateur magician? Nope. I went way out of my comfort zone and developed a few tricks that may or may not impress you as a means to emphasize the value of the unusual in learning. So, Kat wants to see if she can figure all three of them out this time. This is a very simple trick. Mostly, the lavalier's working, right? Okay. Magicians do a lot with sleight of hand that can impress people, and I am not very good at that, but I wanted to see some things. Other things are misdirection and things that make you believe, your brain believes that something is happening even though it actually isn't. So this is a demonstration of that, and I think you'll see what the odd thing that happens in this is, all right? So what I'm asking you is when you see something that happened that's a little bit odd or out of the ordinary, at that point, maybe raise your hands, okay? So I'm just going to take this ball. Can I see your ticket, sir, please? Bill Daw and I have running interchanges for years now. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. Okay. Found it? You see, what would you see? And I don't know, I never imagined that people would have this be able to be done, but magicians can do it in a way that they can have things that are constant patterns in people's minds are still there, and people see it going even though it didn't go. I think Scott and I both read a pretty interesting book, The Science Behind Magic, and there's physical actions that people can do, there's psychological actions that magicians use, emotional tricks, all different things to fool your brain into seeing things that didn't really happen. So if you saw that ball go 10 times, I tricked you. And I don't think I tricked too many people here. And misdirection, right. Look, flying turtles. Second one, standard Kennedy $50, okay? And with that, people do a lot of tricks that I can't do with $50, but they can put it in one hand and then pretend to put it in the other, but it's still in the first, right? They can actually put it in the other, and there it is in the other. They can put it back in the other. They can pretend, and it's not there in the other. A lot of things can go on, right? So a lot of things can happen, and soon it's nowhere. Okay? I probably didn't fool too many people with that trick either. Okay? People that are much more adept can see it. Thank you. What? Chapstick has more uses than you'd imagine. Okay. Third trick. Marty, I think I'm going to ask you if you'll pick a card for us. Regular standard deck of cards, right? Nothing. Can we trust Marty?
Is there 52?
All you got to do is pick one, and I'll have. And then what I'd like to do is have you hand it to Mike Albrow, and he'll walk around the room and show it to everyone so everyone can see it, okay? I won't see it. I'll turn my back, and I won't see it. So you can pick any card that you choose. Don't let me see it. Any card. Not that one. No, okay. I saw the reflection in Marty's glass. Now, you hand it to Mike, and Mike will walk around so everyone can see it, okay? I don't want to see the card. The other cards, I can count them for Marty while he's doing that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 28, 9, 30, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 40, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 51. Okay? Do you walk around? Yeah. Everyone's, all right? And do people see it? Everyone has to see what the card is. Paul, have you seen what the card is? Paul, my eyesight ain't that good. You can put it back in. Okay, now there's nothing. I'm going to shuffle them up a little bit too, right? Comfortable? I don't. It's not the bottom card, is it? Just so there's no problem. It's still not the bottom card. It's okay. I got one choice. I can be right 1 out of 52 times, right? And do this. All right. I have to bring my amazing powers of prestidigitation and thought to this experiment. You may still see the card in there. I'm not sure what it is. Hi, Angie. Okay. So, can maybe think about throwing it up. No, I'm going to throw it against. And the cards all fell down, but one card is on the other side of the door. Can you hand that to me? Jack of Spades? Went right through the glass. Are you impressed? It is hard to are you curious? That's the point. All right.
Well, it's hard to follow that with my little science study here. My goodness. A third study showed that activating the mind with innovating activity, like watching a magic trick, not only increased people's learning for the activity they were doing, but also caused greater attention for other things that were done at the same time. So the volunteers were doing something interesting that would engage them, and they were also shown faces at the same time. And if they were doing something really interesting, then they remembered the faces that were shown to them with greater accuracy than if they hadn't been doing something interesting.
So curiosity is a wonderful thing, but I also want to emphasize that we live in a world where much can be learned. Some of it is valuable and some of it is pernicious. It's important to remember that anything can be taught, and curiosity can be a tool for development and inculcation of the admirable, and it can just as easily be an aid in schooling of nonsense or worse. For every child who has their eyes open to the awe and wonder of science, and believe me, when we have some of these young kids come up to Science Sundays, we just have a ball with them. It's wonderful to have the kids come up to Science Sunday. Mike Albrow has a long-running thing where he wants to start a Science Sunday for kids, or Science for Kids here. But for each child that has their eyes open to the awe and wonder of science, the possibility arises that another can become engaged in a hateful agenda. You may remember that the forces of destruction in the Middle East wanted and were able to encourage certain youth worldwide, and also in the Midwest here in the United States, to leave their country, travel thousands of miles, suffer through terrible conditions, all to participate in ISIS's evil jihad. A poor use of curiosity. Somehow young men marched in Charlottesville. Others attacked worshipers in synagogues in Pittsburgh and San Diego. The tool of curiosity was used there as well. If we want to be free thinkers and also raise free thinkers, we must support the wise use of curiosity and intentionally develop critical thinking skills, the bullshit detectors that are in ourselves and in our children and in our grandchildren.
So now that our brains have all been activated by innovative activity and intellectual stimulation and some challenging questions from Mike, we would like us all to share some curiosity this morning. I'm sure that your brains are ticking with all sorts of questions, perhaps the question that you considered earlier during the invitation to wonder, or perhaps a new one. And we invite you to choose one question that you are curious about right now, perhaps the question we mentioned earlier, but perhaps not. But let it be a question that you would be comfortable with us reading out loud, potentially. And write it on the blank half sheet of paper that's in your order of service. I think you stole it to write something on it. Well, there's a blank half sheet of paper in your order of service. And you should have a pencil that you got at the door to write down your question. If you need one, you can raise your hand. The stewards will help. And Vera is going to play a brief interlude for us, so we have time to write. And after a minute, the stewards will come around with the collection bowls, and they will collect your papers. So we are curious to know what you are curious about. you all for sharing your questions with us. If you haven't had a chance to turn it in yet, the stewards are collecting many eager question givers. This is exciting. We will come back to these questions later in the service when we discuss how we practice curiosity. And as we said earlier, most of us here would agree that we support curiosity, that we support scientific research that has demonstrated how powerful curiosity is. And yet, at the same time, I have an innate skepticism of anything powerful. It's a prejudice that I have, that I try to be aware of. Anything powerful, in my opinion, is capable of wonderful and also terrible things. So I put the question to you: how can we use our curiosity to improve our world, to improve the lives of ourselves and others, and to support our 7 principles? How can we make sure that our search for truth and meaning is not just free, but also responsible? I think of social events and issues of the day, and here I'm going to just go off script because it's more important than what I have written down. To me, I was listening to the radio on the way to church, and I'm going to stick my foot right in it, so just be prepared. Welcome to the UU Church. They had a radio program about trigger laws that are being written in states where people generally oppose abortion. And the trigger laws are designed so that if Roe versus Wade was ever overturned, those laws would go into effect and, for example, make any abortion a triable offense for murder or something like that. And they were interviewing people who supported these laws, people who didn't support them. They had people who were reading some Twitter comments that women had made where they were sharing their story of why they had had an abortion and how important it was in their life, what a powerful impact it had on their life to have that choice. And I was listening to it, and this is one of the central political issues of our time, and one that we will have to grapple with. One that a lot of people have an opinion about, in case you hadn't noticed. And it's troubled me for many years because it's an issue that affects me personally as a woman, and because it's an issue where everyone has an opinion and everyone has an ethical or moral or religious argument, and they're all based on what people want for themselves, what people want for other people, what people think other people should have or not have. And very rarely do I hear anyone discussing anything demonstrable about abortion or the issues surrounding it. I rarely hear any discussion of mental health research into the effects on a woman's psyche of being allowed or not allowed to have an abortion and facing that choice. Rarely do I hear any scientific discussion of when a fetus can feel pain, which seems to me an important part of the discussion, maybe not the answer. And I don't have answers to those questions, but what I don't understand is why no one asks them on the news. It seems like we should try to be answering them. And so I ask us once again, how can we make sure that our search for truth and meaning is not just free, but also responsible?
I'm not done yet.
Well, we all have problems.
Following up on that important topic, I recently was at a small gathering of 8, what I would describe as very progressive intellectuals. And I was there as well. I mentioned an article that I had recently read. It was the first time I ever heard a discussion of the fact that Vermont had tried to institute single-payer health care in 2011, but after 4 years of concerted effort, admitted failure. Green Mountain Care was enthusiastically supported by the newly elected governor who ran on that policy, instituting that policy. It was enthusiastically supported by the legislature, and the electorate put them into power enthusiastically. Everyone was on board. Beyond that, if any state offered fertile terrain to create a single-payer healthcare terrain, Vermont was definitely it. It has some of the nation's healthiest residents, with some of the lowest rates of uninsured. It's small and homogeneous. It shares a border with Canada, putting an existing single-payer system within sight. And it is just one main insurer, the nonprofit Blue Cross Blue Shield of Vermont, repeatedly ranked the most efficient Blue Cross Blue Shield plan in the nation. In a bastion of, at that time, liberal politics, state lawmakers had flirted with single-payer plans as early as the 1990s. But the grassroots crusade really took off on May Day of 2009, so almost exactly 10 years ago, when more than 1,000 people, large for Vermont, toting red signs saying health care is a human right, gathered at the Gold Dome State House for the largest weekday rally at the Capitol in Vermont history. What happened next? Does anyone know? It failed. But why did it fail? And in this group of 8 of us, none of us knew why it failed. Would it be of value to us, many of whom believe in health care for all, to address that question and understand what happened there, what happened in Vermont, so that we can learn and understand the subtleties and nuances of providing universal health care for all? How can we support a reasonable process for Americans to have dependable health care without looking at and understanding this failure? Why has every one of us, and if you have, raise your hand, please. Why has every one of us, in my mind, heard the line, "Every industrialized country provides health care for its people except the U.S." Have you heard that line? Many people have. It's almost the calling card, the rallying cry for progressive thought about universal health care. Every industrialized country provides health care for their people except the United States. So many of us have heard that, but very few of us have heard about the Vermont failure. Why is that? Why do we not know what happened in Vermont and why it happened? Why don't the 22, 23 candidates running for office, for presidency now, the Democratic Party, why don't they talk about what happened there? Bernie Sanders is from Vermont, right? But I think he knows something about it, but people don't want to talk about it. And it demonstrates that not only our media, which we like to blame, but we ourselves sometimes become curious generally only about things that fit into our personal, acceptable worldview. And I don't think that's right. If you're going to be curious, you should be curious in a fair manner, right? You should be curious about what failed that you thought should work and find out why and be able to discuss it with people. Because there are reasons and there are solutions, and it's maybe tougher to do it at a state level. There's a lot of different things to say about it, but we should know about it. We should be curious. We need to be curious and attend to things that are not in our natural comfort zone. You're not done either.
I'm not done.
Mike, you aroused my curiosity. What happened?
That's my job, doing my job. It's like the card trick. Got to think it through.
So we've discussed a lot this morning how important curiosity is, and we have alerted your curiosity to a number of different questions. And the question is, if we think curiosity is important, how can we be more curious for the next 16 hours of the day? I'm doing the math wrong. The next 12 hours of the day, and the next week, and the next month. If we think it's so important, how do we cultivate it? One way to encourage these important skills is to practice them, perhaps we could say religiously. Todd Kashdan, a psychologist, urges us to exercise curiosity more consciously in our daily activities. For example, to take a routine task and then transform it by enlivening it with new energy, by infusing curiosity. If you do this, you will likely also notice, he says, that there are more situations that suddenly have the potential to allow your curiosity to flourish, which you simply didn't recognize before. Here are 4 strategies to consider. First strategy to help practice and develop your curiosity:
build knowledge. Build knowledge. Knowledge opens our eyes to interesting gaps about what we don't know. When a marine biologist goes snorkeling and is able to name specific fishes by the size, color, texture, and shape of eyes and fins, she is going to be acutely aware of the unusual features that the rest of us will miss. A pattern of orange stripes, let's say, that runs vertically rather than horizontally. The child who can name 45 states is much, much more interested in discovering the 5 that he or she doesn't know than the child that knows only 3. If you want to become curious, start accumulating knowledge. Come to Science Sunday. Start your own forum. We should have a civics forum here, I believe. Awaken your inner Sherlock Holmes.
The second strategy is thriving on uncertainty. I don't like the sound of that. We rarely look forward to anxiety and tension. How many of us do? No. But research shows that these mixed emotions are often what lead to the most intense and longest lasting positive experiences in our lives. People who take part in new and uncertain activities, like doing magic tricks at a Sunday service, are happier and find more meaning in their lives than people who rely on the familiar. Most of us believe that certainty will make us happier than uncertainty, right? But imagine the dreariness that would result if you knew exactly how the Cubs were going to do this year, or exactly how your trip to the Grand Canyon would turn out. Remember to cherish the pleasures of surprise and uncertainty, and remind yourself about the pleasures of surprise by thinking back to the last 5 positive events in your life that began with an uncertain or unknown source. Consider sporting events, first dates, job interviews, etc., etc. You will likely be surprised to find how big of a role surprise plays in your joyful experiences.
Reconnect with play. We can add play and playfulness to almost any task, and the attitude of play naturally builds interest and curiosity. This dynamic was captured wonderfully in a national public radio story about an assembly line worker whose job was to make sure that the potato chips rolling down the assembly line were uniform and aesthetically pleasing before being bagged. This man found the job dreary, so he developed a game that made it more interesting. He searched for potato chips resembling famous people. And he kept a collection of them, too. Imagine silhouettes of Elvis, right? Richard Nixon, Marilyn Monroe, Jimi Hendrix. Because he was constantly scanning odd and bizarre shapes for celebrity resemblances, the day moved quickly. He also became incredibly efficient at catching misshapen chips. So that was playfulness, right?
Yes, that was encouraging play. The fourth practice is finding the unfamiliar in the familiar. So one way to become more curious is to intentionally circumvent our expectations, our labels, and our assumptions about seemingly familiar activities and events. It's easy to prejudge an activity because we think that we've seen it before, or to avoid an activity entirely because we expect it to be boring. The goal of discovering the unfamiliar in the familiar is to suspend judgments and pay attention to how things are, rather than how we expect them to be. In a recent study, researchers asked people to do something that they reported disliking, and to pay attention to 3 novel features while they did it. This small exercise altered the way that they viewed and felt about the activity. For example, an 18-year-old male bodybuilder scoffed at the idea of crocheting, but he spent 20 minutes practicing the task and thought about 3 novel discoveries. His were, number 1, how demanding the process of making little tiny stitches could be. He had not thought that this easy task would make him tired. Number 2, that it could actually be meditative. He felt like time flew by. And number 3, he was surprised that the crochet stitches were tight enough to make a pair of flip-flop sandals, which was his task. When the study subjects were contacted weeks later, those who were asked to search for the novel and the unexpected in their task were more likely to have chosen to do the task on their own later without any prompting. There was a window of opportunity and willingness that had opened for these participants that had been previously closed off by their preconceived ideas. Now, this little experiment can be applied to any activity in your life. Consider the list of low-interest but necessary activities in your typical day. Washing dishes. Choose one of these main tasks, and as you do it, search for any 3 novel or unexpected things about it. And whichever of these techniques sounds most attractive to you, building knowledge, thriving on uncertainty, reconnecting with play, or finding the unfamiliar in the familiar, we challenge you to choose just one to incorporate into your life over the next week. Then find a friend to share your experience with. Perhaps challenge them to try the same thing. We are curious to see what you'll come up with.
Today's offering is a special collection for SamariCare, a mental health support and advocacy organization. Scott Mitchell is the president and CEO of SamariCare, and he's here today to let us know about the important work they do. And then when we take the offering, that will be collected for SamariCare's purposes. So, Scott?
Well, it's good to be here with you this morning. And as I said in the first service, I am a psychologist, and so I found this topic of curiosity very interesting to me, in part because some of our interventions, especially at a cognitive behavioral level, use curiosity in some ways as well. I also want to say that I've had the privilege of being here 2 services, and I think I got the card trick figured out. But I'm not going to tell anybody.
All right.
I think my initial hypothesis was right.
It's so hard to fool a clinical psychologist.
That's right. Thank you, the members of DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church, for your financial support of SamariCare over many years now. You, along with many other congregations in Naperville, individuals, foundations, help us to reach out to thousands of people who are unable to afford the services that we provide. Thank you on the behalf of an adolescent girl who was experiencing bullying and peer pressure, and her low self-esteem led her into a depression, and found a counselor at SamariCare who helped her to find strength. Thank you on behalf of a young mom who wanted her husband to come to therapy. He didn't want to go, but she fortunately went on her own. And as a result of that, was able to resolve in her mind a decision to leave a marriage that was incredibly abusive for many, many, many years. And I'll talk a little bit later about her. Thank you on behalf of a young father who found himself depressed and thinking about ending it all, and through a friend was connected to a counselor at SamariCare and found hope for better days to come. 48 years ago now, SamariCare was founded here in Naperville by a variety of congregations with the focus on developing a counseling center that would serve all people, regardless of their ability to pay, and would respect and value all philosophical and values-based that people hold in their lives in order to provide solid help and healing for them. Now, 48 years later, we're probably one of the largest centers of our kind, serving out of our base in Naperville, but also another in Downers Grove in Geneva. We pretty much service all of southern DuPage County, part of Cook, and Will counties as well. On average, we see about 700 new intakes every year. And what I mean by new is those are new people coming in. It could be an individual, it could be a family, it could be an adolescent, a child needing mental health services. There is no time in my career, and I've been doing this a long time, as a psychologist, where I've seen any greater need than we have now for the kind of work that we do. The rates of suicide and depression, which are solidly research-based, are at an all-time high. And we could spend a whole nother service talking about why. But what we do is intervene with those folks, helping them to find hope and healing and for better days to come. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your service. And I thought I would end with some words from that young mom that I talked about at the beginning. She actually spoke at our Silent Samaritan Breakfast in February. It's a fundraising event. We have about 300 women. It's a women helping women event come out. And she shared her story. And at the end, she thanked everyone who were there, who were predominantly donors, by saying, "I cannot find the words to say how grateful I am for your help. I would simply not be here without you. Finally, my children are smiling with me and laughing again." And when she said, "I would not be here without you," she literally means she would not be alive. I mean, I know the situation was horrendous abuse that she was going through. So thank you again, and thank you for your support in allowing me to be part of this service this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell, for your work. Please note that all cash in the offering bowls will be donated to SamariCare, and if you wish to write a check, you can make it out to DupageUU Church and write "Special Collection" in the memo line. The offering will now be given and gratefully received. Thank you. Thank you so much, Vera.
We won't read all of these, but
there's so many good ones.
and they could be topics for Science Sundays or other sermons here or different things too, so we ought to collect and categorize these things. Is currency necessary in a sustainable society? That's an interesting topic.
Am I reading these?
Just some of them.
Okay. What is a black hole, really? Why are humans so violent towards one another?
Because they don't agree about black holes,
Maybe.
obviously. How do we encourage generosity?
Is there intelligent life on other planets?
Is there intelligent life on this planet? What is the best way to remember my passwords?
Why are humans greedy?
How are we doing in getting an intern minister?
Must be tired of us, huh?
Yeah,
The big hook's coming.
there was a big question in the middle of our service here.
Will the White Sox win today?
What is my reason for living?
When did language begin? And why don't fish die when lightning strikes the water? Now I'm really curious about that.
And the most long-lasting, deepest question of all, what are the words to Louie, 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 Lua?
And now please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing closing song number 354, just verses 1 and 4.
We're keeping it short.
We laugh, we cry.
In the spirit of most of our Science Sundays, we intentionally run a little long because we're just having so much fun. Thanks for your patience. Curiosity. Practice it, expand on it, develop it, cherish it. At coffee hour, become a better listener to the other person you're with. Make it your goal to learn as much about that person and his or her perspectives as possible. Find a way to give that other time and space to flesh out his or her ideas. Consider every conversation an opportunity to discover something that's truly fascinating and thought-provoking. Have a talk about libertarianism, for gosh sakes. Find out what is good and useful about a worldview that varies from your own. Don't just beat it into the ground as soon as you hear about it. Don't search out the comfortable, familiar friend each time. Learn about magic. Find out about the Vermont healthcare experiment. Read up on Einstein, Linus Pauling, or Max Planck. Thrive on uncertainty. reconnect with play, and find the unfamiliar in the familiar. Most importantly, here at church and throughout your life, keep curious. Thank you so much. Now, turn around and meet your neighbor and have an enjoyable time in coffee hour. Thank you.